Hi, Emily here from Homemade Emily Jane, and I have some exciting news for you today. The Blessings Quilt Pattern is finally available. This is the Blessings Quilt Pattern, and I am very excited to share it with the world. Blessings is a beginner-friendly quilt pattern featuring Flying Geese Quilt Blocks. It is a modern twist on a very traditional shape. Before I dive into information about the Blessings Quilt Pattern, let me share with you a little bit about the history. I designed my first Blessings quilt when I was pregnant with my son, who I had last year. And it took a long time for me to finally get the pattern all written and ready. I went back and forth a lot with different methods of how to explain it. So it's been a long time coming, and I'm really excited to share it. I did share a little bit about how this quilt pattern was named Blessings over on Instagram, so I thought I would share here as well. It is named after my son, who is the biggest little blessing in my life. His name is Bennett, which actually means little blessed one. So that's kind of a little bit more of why this pattern is named Blessings, a little bit behind the scenes. Now let me share with you about the pattern. Obviously it features flying geese, that's the main component throughout the quilt. It features the 4 at a time flying geese technique, which is a no waste method, and at first it can be kind of scary and intimidating, but have no fear, I have a tutorial right here for you all about the no waste method, and that tutorial will teach you how to make all different sizes of flying geese using the same technique. This pattern features only one size of flying geese throughout the entire quilt, which makes it very great for chain sewing and really good for advanced beginner quilters. The Flying Geese Quilt Block is actually one of the first that I learned as a first-time quilter. I learned half square triangles first, and then flying geese were quickly next. This pattern is available over in my shop. I have the paper pattern, and then I also have PDF patterns available as well, which you can just download onto your device. So whichever method you like, make sure you visit homemadeemilyjane.com/shop, find the Blessings pattern in the format that you prefer, and go ahead and grab it today. The Blessings quilt pattern includes 3 sizes. The one behind me you'll see is the row size, and I actually do have quilt kits currently available to make this exact quilt. So I will drop a link to that in the description below for you if you want to make a quilt just like mine, the one on the cover of the pattern. The quilt kit includes fabric for the quilt top, binding fabric, and a paper copy of the pattern as well. If you prefer to not purchase the kit, obviously you can pick your own fabrics. The Blessings quilt pattern is extremely scrap friendly and pre-cut friendly too. So let me talk a little bit about the fabric requirements for each size. The baby size uses either 4 quarter yards, 5 fat quarters, or 10 fat eighths. Or of course, you can use scraps from your stash for any of the sizes too. The throw size you can make using 10 quarter yards, which is what the quilt kit includes, or 12 fat quarters, or 24 fat eighths. And for bed size, you can use 18 quarter yards, 23 fat quarters, or 45 fat eighths. You'll notice that it does require more fat quarters than if you were using quarter yards, and that's just because of how the fabric is laid out and how you can cut the pieces that you need. So if you do use fat quarters, you'll have some extra scraps left over for future quilts. They just won't be big enough scraps for this quilt. The Blessings quilt pattern also includes AccuQuilt friendly instructions. So you'll notice inside the pattern, I have instructions for using an AccuQuilt Go fabric cutting machine. I try to include this for as many of my quilt patterns as possible. If they have shapes that are AccuQuilt friendly, I love to include extra instructions showing you which dies to use, adjusted fabric requirements, and how to cut out the pieces that you need. The fabric requirements for this specific quilt, you're able to use the same number of fabrics for the colors, and then you just need a little bit extra background fabric. One of my favorite things about using AccuQuilt for the Blessings quilt pattern is that it uses one of my favorite die sets. So if you already have the 12-inch cube, you already have the dies that you need for the flying geese. And if you don't already have the 12-inch mix and match cube, it is a fantastic one to add to your collection. If you are curious about AccuQuilt but want to learn more, make sure you check out this video right here, which will show you everything you need to know about using an AccuQuilt Go machine. Now, if you're not using an AccuQuilt Go, but you do plan on making this quilt using a rotary cutter and rulers, I have a few recommendations for you of my favorite tools and rulers that I like to use while making the Blessings quilt. You'll find a list of all of my favorite tools that I used while making my Blessings quilt over on my blog, so make sure you check out the blog post. I will link it down below for you as well if you want to get all of the details about my favorite tools for making my Blessings quilt. I will highlight one of the tools that I loved using is the Stripology ruler. Even if I'm using AccuQuilt, I still like to use my Stripology ruler for cutting out any strips, any squares or rectangles. So that comes in really handy, and I used it quite a bit for this pattern. And of course, if you're not familiar with Stripology, I have a tutorial for that as well right here for you. So head over there and check it out. Thank you so much for joining me as we celebrate the release of the Blessings Quilt Pattern. Obviously, this one means a lot to me, and I've spent many months pouring into this pattern, so I hope that you love it as much as I do. Let me share with you just a few of the different versions that I have made prior to finishing the pattern. So obviously I made this throw size for the cover of the pattern and for the quilt kits, and I really love the vibrant colors. These are all blenders from Riley Blake Fabrics. So you'll see the background is Riley White solid, and then all of the Flying Geese are some really vibrant, fun colors that have little tiny designs on them. So it might be like a little texture or bead cross stitch. I've got one fabric in here with a little metallic, so it's a lot of fun little details, but from far away they read as solids. I also made two Blessings baby size quilts. The first one I made was before the pattern was written. I was just kind of making a quilt for my son while I was pregnant, and that was the first Blessings quilt. I used fabrics from my stash and used green and orange for his citrus themed nursery, and I backed the quilt in a citrus fabric as well. This is from the Fruity collection by Paintbrush Studio Fabrics. The other baby quilt that I made using the Blessings pattern is this one, also fabrics from my stash. It uses a super light gray, almost white background fabric, and then just a different blue, dark blues, so you can kind of make a fun baby boy quilt just like this one if you wanted. And I used minky fabric for the back of this baby quilt. I love using minky fabric on the backings of baby quilts because it makes it so cuddly and warm. And if you're scared of using minky, or maybe just want to learn some tips and tricks, check out this video right here all about backing a quilt with minky. In addition to those two baby quilts, I also made another throw size quilt. This is another monochromatic type quilt that I made using lots of different aquas and teal fabrics. So this one you'll see is throw size, super cozy and cuddly, and backed with this wide back quilting cotton. If you want to learn a little bit more about any of the sample quilts that I've made, head over to my website, homemadeemilyjane.com, and I'll try to get the details for each of these quilts up over on the blog. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them below. I'm always happy to help. I'd love to hear what you think about the Blessings quilt pattern. Please drop a comment below, either letting me know what you think or just saying hi, introducing yourself. If you want more quilting tips, tricks, inspiration, or just to find out when I have new tutorials and patterns available, make sure you subscribe here on YouTube and check out homemadeemilyjane.com, where you'll find a library of tons of resources over there for you already. Happy sewing!